Well, hello, welcome back to my virtual sofa. Russell Jones here at the Stamford Symphony. A very special guest today. I'm very lucky to be talking to the principal harp of the Stamford Symphony, Amy Berger. Amy, welcome, hello.
Hello, thank you for having me today.
And you're home safe and well, staying isolated, I hope?
Yes, everything's good. I'm in New York City, so it's a little, obviously crazy here, but we're managing.
Great. Well, thank you very much for joining us and sharing your story with the Stamford Symphony family. Now, the harp. Why the harp? Did you choose to play the harp? How did that come about?
I always say I was too young to know any better. My parents had rented a harp for my older sister, and she started taking lessons. I was about 5 then, and then a year later, after a lot of begging if I could take lessons also, my mother said, I have to learn how to read the notes. I have to learn how to read music before she would let me take lessons. So somehow I figured it out, and we had a piano. So I was able to match the note on the staff to the piano notes. And then I started at age 6. So I thought it was normal for anyone to have a piano or a harp in their house.
Right.
Since I basically grew up with it there.
Now I know violinists kids can get smaller size violins. Obviously when they're small, they play on quarter size and so on. Presumably harps come in 6-year-old sizes?
They do have different styles of harps. Some are Irish or folk harps. And usually children start on those harps, but I actually started on the regular size concert pedal harp. And I have to say, as the age of 6, my feet didn't hit the ground, and they weren't long enough yet to move the pedals. But when you first start out, you play basic things with easy keys, so you don't have to move the pedals while you play.
Right, now you touch on a good point, because when people think of the harp, I think they think of cherubs on clouds and angels just holding it and plucking it. And I think a lot of us think, oh, that's quite a simple instrument. But actually, it's one of the hardest instruments in the orchestra, isn't it?
It's very difficult because the pedal harp, which is the modern concert harp, has 21 different positions for 7 pedals to be in. Each pedal, there's one for each note, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Each pedal has 3 different notches. It could be in the top notch, which is flat, the middle notch, which is natural, and the bottom notch, which would be sharp. And when you move a pedal, you're not just moving it down, but you have to move it to this in also to hook it into place so it doesn't pop back up. And after you play a note which has an accidental, at some point you might need to put it back into, let's say, the flat position. So that sounds complicated, right?
It certainly does. It would be like a pianist having to create all her own notes. I suppose organists use their feet as well, don't they?
They do, but they're actually pressing on a specific note, which amazes me when I watch what they have to do, because it's like playing the piano keyboard with your feet for the organ. So for the harp, it's just very complicated, but you kind of figure it out. And what I was going to say about the piece for the Debussy piece, it was originally written for the chromatic harp, which had 2 sets of strings crisscrossing each other with no pedals. So that would be like the piano keyboard with all the black and white keys together. So the harp is like the strings, the pedal harp, the strings would be like the C major scale or the white keys on the piano. And then the pedals on the harp create the black notes of the piano, which are the sharps and the flats pretty much.
So everybody watching this video, I can tell you Amy is going to do another video for us when she's actually going to demonstrate all this, because it'll be easier to see you doing things with your feet and hands at the same time. It is very complicated. Now, you mentioned the Debussy there that we were going to play at our concert that we had to postpone in March, which is a great shame. And I really absolutely hope we will reorganize that very soon, because it's a beautiful, beautiful piece. Tell us about it and why it's special for you.
I first started studying that piece when I was in undergraduate school. I was studying with Pearl Shertock, and she wanted me to go into an international competition, which they still have to this day. It's the Israeli competition, and there are about 8 very difficult pieces of repertoire to learn by heart, and that was one of the pieces. So I did learn that as a young student. I was in college, so I learned that piece. But it's interesting that every time you pull it out again and start looking at it, you just learn it almost as if it's brand new, because you find so many more things in it. And as a more mature player, you start to really appreciate the piece even more than ever.
Was Debussy, do you think, a natural composer for the harp? I mean, there must be some composers who really get the instruments and write really well, and others who don't so much and just put it into the orchestration, and you can tell the ones that really get it. Is that true?
Well, I think the type of music that Debussy was into playing was sort of intimate, and it's very suitable for the sounds and the colors of the harp. And he orchestrated very well using the harp in certain pieces. And yeah, I would say he wrote very well for the harp, but because this piece in particular was originally written for the chromatic harp and then rewritten for the pedal harp, it's a very, very difficult piece to play. And it always looks so pretty when you're playing the harp and you're just, you know, doing this kind of thing, and everyone loves the sound of the harp. But really, they have no idea what's going on in your brain in order to play those chords and rhythms. I consider it to be a very difficult piece to play.
Probably why they choose it for competitions, because it's a good test.
Yes.
Let's talk a little bit about the other playing you do. You've played with the Stamford Symphony for many years, but I know you have other work in the tri-state area. Tell us some of the other things you do.
Well, I've played a lot of opera, I have played Broadway shows, I do recording work. I like other kinds of music besides classical, such as pop. I've worked with some fantastic musicians, such as Tony Bennett and Juan Luis Guerra, who's very famous for Latin pop. He's from the Dominican Republic. He's a fantastic musician. I've worked with Van Dyke Parks. He was more in the rock and roll kind of genre. So I've done a lot of chamber music, a lot of solo work, just a bit of everything, really. Contemporary music. It's all fun, it's all challenging, and it's all fun to play.
So, as I've said to others in these interviews, this is a very frustrating time for musicians because we're all stuck at home, you can't perform, concerts are cancelled. What are you doing to keep sane? And are you practicing a lot, or are you teaching online? What are you doing?
I would say the first week I was sort of a little stunned by everything that was going on, and I couldn't feel like I could get into the space where I was calm enough and could really concentrate on my work. But after a week of that, I thought I have to get on with and learn some new music. So actually, I've been practicing for next season. I've been practicing the Korngold Violin Concerto. I'm very excited about playing that piece. It's beautiful. And I actually happen to know Eric Korngold's granddaughter. So I called her up and I told her that we were doing this piece. And Mahler, the Adagietto in the Mahler 5 Symphony is so beautiful and poignant. And I think it's a beautiful piece to play at this time. So I've been working on, other orchestral repertoire, Prokofiev 5, and I'm trying to get a few friends of mine who are composers to write me some music. So I'll be working on things like that.
That sounds great. And you're right, we've got some wonderful music for harp in the season next year. And the Corn Gold, I know when we close the season, next season, is going to be a marvelous piece with Ilana Burosti. So absolutely looking forward to that. Let's go back to composers. You mentioned Debussy.
Okay.
Who else do you like to play?
Yes, don't forget Ravel.
Ravel, of course.
Ravel.
I mean, do French composers particularly write well for the harp?
I think they do. I think they do, because it was the era of what was going on in the art world then, and a lot of people were in Paris and they all influenced each other. And I feel like the Impressionist style works well, and it's beautiful for the harp. And it's a tradition in France, actually. The French style of harp playing, I think it's all integrated.
Sorry, go ahead, please.
Say one interesting thing is the Debussy was commissioned to write the Debussy dances because the Pleyel instrument company had built this new harp that they wanted to promote, the chromatic harp. And so they commissioned him, and they wanted to have this competition so people could play on the chromatic harp. And afterwards, the Erard Harp Company decided to ask Ravel to write a piece for the another competition. And so maybe they were checking each other out, what was going on, and Ravel wrote the introduction and Allegro, which are both very great pieces for the harp repertoire.
I was so sorry we lost our program in March, because the first piece we were going to play on that program was Chaconne by Hannah Lash, who is based in Yale. She's a harpist, and I think she's actually composed 2 harp concertos. And we were going to open with a piece of Hannah's. That was such a shame that we lost our program, but we'll do what we can to bring it back in future years. Well, I think we have something pre-recorded that we're going to listen to now. Tell us about the piece you chose.
The piece I chose is a Spanish Renaissance piece called Harpist, and it's by Ribaez.
Amy, thank you so much. That was delightful. That was a beautiful performance. Please stay safe and well, and I hope we'll see you back on the Stamford Symphony channel very soon.
Thank you so much for having me, and I hope everyone is okay. So I send my regards to the orchestra and the audience.
Thanks, Amy. Take care.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next time.